Good morning. So, making tax digital for income tax. Is it happening or is it not? Nobody seems to actually know what's going on. I looked at the news this morning and thought, for sure, we'll know by 11 o'clock whether it's been pushed back to April 2026. But actually, things still seem to be as confused as ever. So the news for those who have not yet been updated on making tax digital for income tax is that two of the big national newspapers carried stories yesterday saying it was going to be pushed back to April 2026. But HMRC's press office has yet to confirm that. It does seem to be more and more widely acknowledged that it is pretty inevitable that it's going to have to get pushed back because people, freelancers, software, and most importantly, HMRC are just not ready. But I'll be honest and say I think it's a really frustrating move, not least because my tax advisor has spent the last 6 weeks encouraging those of you freelancers out there to rethink what you're going to do and put plans in place. Consider how you're going to make some changes to the way your business works so that you're ready for the compliance involved in making tax digital for income tax by April 2024. And for many of you, that really means getting things up and running by April 2023 so that you can have a trial period. That's really soon. And now suddenly we're putting the brakes on and saying, no, forget it. Just put it all back to bed for another year or two and we'll revisit later. And I think that's really difficult to manage, the stop-start nature of it. As it happens, for what it's worth, that's the second time that for our direct clients, that our practice has sent out a message to all our clients saying, right, this is on the horizon, it's going to happen, you're going to need to start thinking about how to get ready, we're going to put things in place to support you, and we've invested time and energy and software resources to being able to support those freelancer clients. And now we're going to write and say, forget it. It's not happening for another year or two. It makes it very difficult to be credible when we're going to come back on a third time lucky announcement at some point in maybe the next 18 months to 2 years and say, oh no, this time it really is happening. So that was 2017 was my first announcement. Autumn 2022 was when I really sort of said, look, this looks like it's going to happen this time to everybody. And now let's wait and see. So where does that leave us for our final week bootcamp session for making tax digital for income tax? It's somewhat difficult to know how best to approach it. The plan was, and actually is going to remain for the next 10 minutes, to do a recap of our top tips for freelancers, because truthfully, these are useful tips for you irrespective of making tax digital for income tax. They're useful in terms of filing your annual self-assessment. But even though I'm loath to put a time on it anymore, this will happen at some point. And when it does, you'll find yourself well and truly ready, if you've taken up some of our advice in the intervening year or two. So here we go. Let's do a quick recap on the things that we think are going to be useful for your freelance small business, to make it a digital forward-looking business, able to cope with whatever sort of compliance requirements HMRC are going to throw at you in the future. Tip number 1. The first thing I think is going to be really useful for all of you is, if you haven't already done so, to nominate a specific bank account. Use one bank account for all of your businesses, income and expenditure. And for many of you freelancers, you use your personal account. There's nothing wrong with that, but it means there's a free flow of information, which is both personal and business related, going through that account. And that is going to be somewhat tricky to manage when you make the next step in terms of getting ready for digital reporting to HMRC, because you're going to have to weed out a lot of personal detail in terms of transactions. So choose a bank account. Lots and lots of choices out there. We're definitely not going to get involved in specifying which bank account is going to be most useful for you. The one thing I will mention though is that NatWest business accounts at the moment, and who knows whether this will continue to be the case, but at the moment they offer a free subscription to Free Agent as part of their the offering for their business accounts. In particular, the one for freelancers that they push is something called Metal, which you need to look at in fairly close detail to decide if that account is appropriate for you. But if it is, then Free Agent accounting software will come alongside it for free, and that will save you no small amount of money, just short of 20 quid a month. So really well worth looking at if you're starting from scratch and picking a new bank account to use. So that was our top tip number 1. Top tip number 2 was to think carefully about what kind of digital reporting is going to work for you. And I have tried to categorize freelancers into 3 primary groups in terms of how they report their income and expenditure usually. And they are: group number 1 are those people for whom business income and expense goes in and out of multiple accounts, maybe bank accounts, personal, joint, credit card, and so on. For those people, if you want to continue to work in that way, an app that allows you to enter income and expenditure is going to be the most useful one, because you do not want to link 4 or 5 different accounts and credit cards to some sort of accounting software. So the one that I like, which is very simple but effective for that style of reporting, is ZeroGo, free at the moment. Add-on costs if you start to want to invite your accountant, or if you do indeed want to maybe link one of your multiple accounts for a feed into that software. So like everything, check the small print, but really quite useful for those of you who want to really sort of move what maybe historically would have been pen and paper transactional records onto some kind of digital platform, but it's really you who initiates including an income or expense transaction into your books, and that gives you the freedom to do that because it's not directly linked to a bank account. So quite flexible in that way, and very inexpensive. So that is my first type of digital reporting option for you. The second is the much more common one, and truthfully I think the one that a lot of freelancers are going to find or think they need to default to, and that is accounting software such as QuickBooks, Xero, Free Agent, which we've just mentioned, Sage, Coconut is a new one on the block. There are lots and lots of options out there, and one of our sessions in previous weeks was trying to do a like-for-like comparison, because they all offer different price setups, they all offer different early discount phases, and when you start to dig into the nitty-gritty of what each accounting software offers you, there are variables. So some of the lower packages on Xero, for example, will limit the number of invoices you can generate. One of the issues I had with QuickBooks, for example, is that they haven't yet confirmed whether Making Tax Digital for Income Tax is going to be part of the offering on their self-employed, QuickBooks self-employed package, which is their, their relatively inexpensive option for freelancers. So there are things to question about all of them. One of the slight questions I'd have about Free Agent is that although they promote the fact that it's useful for landlords as well as freelancers, you do, as things stand, have to have 2 subscriptions to do that. So you're doubling up on your accounting software fees. So there's negative aspects to all of them, but obviously there's positive aspects to all of them. And I would just say, dig into the detail or go back and have a look at our crib sheet from last week, which tries to do a like-for-like comparison summary as best we can. That's the second type of client. Sorry, we're still on subsection 2 of tip 2. Our third client is the spreadsheet client, so pen and paper moving on to spreadsheet client ideally, and absolutely fine if that's where you want to stay. There will be bridging software that will enable you to report digitally to HMRC, so don't panic, you don't have to buy accounting software in the future. The one thing I would say is that I think as a general rule the bridging software is less intuitive to use as a non-accountant, so you'll want to weigh up time spent scratching your head and getting frustrated with software versus the cost of maybe a monthly subscription to something. But It will absolutely work. It's been confirmed by HMRC it'll work. And if that's what you like and that's what you want to use, then go for it, I say. So those are the 3 types of clients in terms of how you can think about reporting digitally to HMRC, and think about which type you are, and then start to explore your options within the subcategories, if you like. So that's top tip 2, quite a detailed top tip, that one. Top tip number 3 is really a follow-on, well, as they all are. It's to check the fine print on each of the accounting packages, because what I found when we really started to dig into them is that there is quite a lot of variance between what superficially looks like the same offering across all software houses and software packages. So really do look at things, and I've got a list of things that I think you can check, and they are, so this is my list of things to look at when you're choosing a piece of software. How many invoices can you raise? Is there a bank feed, or do you have to pay extra for it? Can you invite your accountant? I think that's a really critical one. It's not absolutely universal, and I think you want to be able to do that. Look at the cost as a VAT inclusive price. All of them quote prices exclusive of VAT. You want to top that up with the VAT included for those of you who are not VAT registered, which is probably the case for most of you looking at accounting software for the first time. Can they cope with Making Tax Digital for income tax submission to HMRC? Are they already ready, as some of them are? If not, although obviously now there's been this huge delay, allegedly, I would expect most of the ones that I would want to commit money to at this stage to be ready, because you want to start being confident that if you get to know a piece of software, that it's going to work for you in the future. And will it support the Making Tax Digital pilot scheme? Again, not all of them will do that. Only certain pieces of accounting software have been accepted by HMRC onto their pilot scheme. So it's worth having a look at which softwares have already been accepted, because obviously you can be confident that they are going to work ultimately, and sort of maybe narrow down your choices with that in mind. And my last recommendation is that you use the trial period for all of them and have a go. If you do that in a year of accounts where you're not compelled to use it to ultimately report, then you can have a dig around, have a go, make a mess if you need to, and then start again in a new accounting year when you're a bit more confident with the software. One of the questions that I can see has just come in is, can credit cards be linked easily to the software? And yes, they in my experience, any credit card that I've tried to link to accounting software, it works in exactly the same way that a bank account works. The interface in terms of pulling in the transactional data looks exactly the same as it does with any bank account. Similarly, sort of following on from that, bank accounts like Starling, Tide, all of those are also usually supported, but definitely worth. If you're a Tide bank account user, or you're thinking about taking out an account with Starling or Monzo, well, Monzo I know is generally accepted, but yeah, have a look and make sure the bank account you want to use is supported. It's definitely something to think about. But credit cards, certainly in my experience thus far, and I think any credit card with a major bank is absolutely certainly going to be fed in to the transactions in the same way that a regular bank account would. Helen, you've just asked, do some software packages charge more to have a bank feed from a credit card versus a sort of regular bank account? I don't think they do. The exception to that would be something like ZeroGo, for example, where they charge per bank feed. But that ZeroGo offering is an exception to the rule, because it's much more of an app style offering. It's really being offered to those freelancers who want to be able to pull in income and expense from multiple sources. So they don't want to be tied down to one bank account or even one or two bank accounts. They want to be able to look across all of their accounts over a month or 6 months, or maybe a very stressful day at the end of the year when you sit at your kitchen table and try to get through everything. And you want to be able to see what's gone on in all of your accounts and then put that into some sort of a digital reporting offering. That's what Zero Go is really set up to do. And if you choose that, then you really don't need a bank feed at all. But in the future, if you decided you wanted a bank feed on maybe the account that you use more than any other, it's £4 per bank feed. So of course, by the time you add a bank and a credit card and maybe invite your accountant, you're definitely back up to the same sort of monthly subscription cost as a regular Zero subscription cost would be. So that's where you really do need to dig into the detail to see how much is it all going to cost you. So that is my third top tip. My fourth is my fourth is a little bit of a moot point now this morning because we don't know the timescale anymore. My fourth tip was get started in April 23 and be comfortable making mistakes and getting things wrong in that year that leads you up to April 24. Maybe that tip now should be get started in April 24 or 25 with a view to being ready in April 26. Honestly, who knows? But with all of these things, the sooner you can get going and get comfortable with it, the better it's going to be in the long run. And actually, requirements aside, reporting digitally ultimately should do what all of the accounting packages say they do. It should make you more efficient and save you time. Although there's a huge caveat on that, which is that you have to know what you're doing in the first place. And of course, that would lead me very nicely into tip number 5, which is speak to your accountant. Have they got a piece of accounting software they already use and they already like? If they're allied to QuickBooks, then really go for QuickBooks. If they're allied to Free Agent, go for Free Agent. So have a conversation with them and see what are they using? What do they think they'd like their clients to use? Ask why, make sure it's going to work for you, but beyond that, it makes sense to be aligned with your accountant. And speaking as a practice owner, it is something we're going to have to think about because I don't think an accountant is going to be in a position to support multiple software packages. So we're all going to have to think about, can we support more than one or two? I would say probably best not to. So yeah, I won't waffle. Speak to your accountant and see what they like. And sixth and final point is to keep an eye on mytaxadvisor.org because we're really invested in what's happening to freelancers at the moment in terms of what they're being asked to do by HMRC. It looks like we have a reprieve. It's not absolutely certain yet. So in the next day or two, we will certainly keep you updated on that and keep you posted. But we are certain, everybody is certain, that this initiative is going to happen eventually, even if it ultimately ends up being more than a decade after it was first announced in 2015. But it will happen. We will be required to be more and more digital in terms of how we keep our records and how we report to HMRC. There's an inevitability to it. And we're invested in trying to support freelancers to work with that, to find a way to make it useful for you and make it useful for your business. We want to be there to answer your questions, to help you when you get a bit stuck, and in particular to answer some of the broader questions around tax and doing things correctly and reporting things correctly when you're working through some of these bits of software independently. So if you're working through your tax return independently, we want to be here available to help you answer the questions when you have something very specific that needs a tax advisor. So my tax advisor is here specifically to try and provide advice and guidance to freelancers in the context of making tax digital for income tax, but more generally, we're there to support you overall with your compliance with HMRC, making sure you do things correctly and ask questions of us if you're not sure. So those are our 5 top tips. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's keep an eye on the news for the next day or so. I'll definitely come back and put an announcement up. And in the meantime, please do subscribe to us, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and all the various social media platforms, and we'll keep you posted. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a happy holiday when you eventually get there.